The first sign that something was wrong was the way my father stopped smiling. I didn't notice it right away. Honestly, I was still looking at the thick folder on the lawyer's desk, waiting to hear how my grandfather's life was about to be divided into numbers and signatures. The room smelled faintly of old paper and furniture polish, the kind of smell that makes you sit a little straighter without realizing it. We were all there. My father, Richard, my mother, Linda, my older brother, Ethan, and me. Daniel Brooks, my grandfather's estate attorney, had just cleared his throat when the door behind us opened. His assistant stepped in first and leaned toward him. "Mr. Brooks," she said quietly. "The representative from Northridge Capital is here about the matter we discussed this morning." Daniel looked annoyed for a second, then nodded. "Send him in." A man walked into the room like he belonged there. Tall, gray suit, calm expression. He looked straight at me. "Excuse me," he said. "I'm looking for Natalie Carter." Something about the way he said my name made my stomach tighten. Daniel Brooks gestured toward the chair. "And you are Marcus Hale, Northridge Capital." He set a folder on the table and slid it toward me. "Ms. Carter," he said evenly. "Our records show you owe $247,000. For a second, I actually laughed, because sometimes your brain does strange things when reality tilts sideways. "I think you have the wrong person," I said. Marcus didn't argue. He simply turned the document toward me. My signature was on the last page. That was when I looked at my parents. Neither of them would look back. Nobody spoke for a few seconds. I kept staring at the signature at the bottom of the page. My name, written exactly the way I always write it. Same curve in the N, same lazy line under Carter. Except I hadn't written it. Daniel Brooks leaned forward and adjusted his glasses. "Mr. Hale, are you saying Ms. Carter personally opened this credit line?" Marcus Hale didn't raise his voice. "The application lists Natalie Carter as the borrower, $247,000, secured against her property." "My property," I said. Marcus nodded. "Your condominium on South Wabash." I blinked. I didn't authorize any loan. My father shifted in his chair. I heard the faint creak of the leather under him. Daniel Brooks looked from Marcus to me. "Natalie, have you ever signed a home equity agreement?" "No." Marcus tapped the folder lightly. "The documentation includes a signed power of attorney allowing a representative to act on your behalf?" "A representative," I said. Ethan finally spoke. His voice sounded casual, almost bored. "Maybe you forgot something." I turned toward him slowly. $247,000, I said. "You think I'd forget?" that Ethan shrugged. My mother reached for my arm. "Honey, let's just calm down." I pulled away. Marcus closed the folder again. "Our legal department will begin collection proceedings in 7 days. Daniel Brooks cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should pause the reading of the will." I looked back at the document on the table. Then I looked at my parents. My father still wouldn't meet my eyes. Daniel Brooks was the first to stand. "Let's take a short break," he said. Nobody argued. We stepped into the hallway, the door closing behind us with a soft click that felt louder than it should have. The carpet smelled faintly like cleaning chemicals. My head felt hot. I turned to my parents. "All right," I said. "Tell me what's going on." My father lifted his hands like he was trying to slow everything down. "Natalie, just calm down." "Don't tell me to calm down." Linda stepped forward quickly. "Honey, we can talk about this." I pulled my arm away. $247,000, I said. "Explain how my name ended up on that loan." My father rubbed his forehead. "There has to be some mistake." Ethan snorted quietly from the wall. "There's no mistake." I turned toward him. "What did you say?" He shrugged. "You have good credit. That's all." My chest tightened. "You used my name." Ethan rolled his eyes like I was being dramatic. "Relax. It was temporary." Linda's voice broke. "We were going to fix it." I looked at my father again. "You signed something." Richard hesitated just long enough. "It was paperwork." he muttered. For a loan, I said. Silence. Linda covered her mouth. Then the words slipped out. We only borrowed it for a while. Borrowed. Like my identity was something hanging in the closet. I looked back at Ethan. You needed the money. He didn't deny it. He just shrugged again. I figured you'd help. I stood there for a moment, letting the silence sit between us. Then I said quietly, Give me 7 days. And I walked back into the office. I went back into the conference room, but my head was still in that hallway. Marcus Hale and Daniel Brooks were speaking quietly across the table. I couldn't catch the words, just the low murmur of voices and the steady hum of the air conditioner above us. I kept watching Ethan, and honestly, the strange thing was, none of this shocked me as much as it should have. Ethan had always been the golden child. When we were younger, he could break things and everyone called it a phase. When I messed up, it was called disappointing. When I was 23, Ethan ran up almost $40,000 in credit card debt. My parents called a family meeting at the kitchen table like it was a board discussion. My father leaned forward and said, Your brother just needs help getting back on his feet. I remember looking at him and saying, Why are you telling me Linda answered before he could? Because you're responsible. So I helped. I worked extra hours, moved money around, and helped him clear the debt. And now, here we were again. Ethan leaned forward across the table. Look, he said, lowering his voice. This wasn't supposed to get out of control. $247,000 isn't out of control, I said. He rubbed the back of his neck. You have the condo. Stable job. Good credit. It made sense. Made sense. Like I was something useful sitting on a shelf. I looked over at Marcus Hale. Give me 7 days, I said. He studied my face for a moment. Then he nodded once. 7 days. And for the first time since he walked into that room, Ethan stopped looking comfortable. The first call I made was to Daniel Brooks. He answered on the second ring. Natalie, he said in that steady voice of his. I assumed you would want to review the loan documents. I need everything, I said. The application, the authorization forms, the power of attorney, all of it. There was a short pause. All right, he said. But if the documents suggest fraud, we involve the bank immediately. Good, I said, because I never signed any of it. 2 days later, I was sitting in a small office at the bank across from a woman named Karen from their fraud department. She placed a folder on the table and slid it toward me. You should take a careful look at this. The first page was the loan application. My name, my address, my condominium listed as collateral. Karen tapped the next document. Power of attorney authorization. I stared at the signature at the bottom. It looked close enough to mine that most people wouldn't question it. But I knew my own handwriting. I didn't sign this, I said. Karen nodded slowly. That's what we suspected. She opened another file and turned it toward me. The loan was approved 18 months ago. $247,000. I leaned back slightly. Where did the money go? Karen pointed to the transfer record. The funds were wired within hours of approval. She tapped the destination account, a casino marker clearing system in Indiana. For a moment I didn't speak. Then I let out a short breath. Of course. Karen didn't react. Instead, she opened one more document. This is the appointment record from the branch that processed the loan. 2 names were listed. Richard Carter, Ethan Carter. I stared at the page for a long moment. Then I looked up. I need copies of everything. Karen nodded. Good, she said calmly, because this investigation doesn't end with the loan. 3 days into the 7, Daniel Brooks called me back to his office. He didn't bother with small talk. I've reviewed the documents, he said. And Natalie, this is worse than we thought. He pushed a stack of papers across the desk. Your father submitted a power of attorney document. I saw it. Daniel nodded. The signature appears forged. Appears, I said. He met my eyes. It is forged. That word landed heavier than I expected. Forged. Not a misunderstanding, not a mistake, a crime. Daniel opened another folder. There's more. Inside were printed emails. Sender, Natalie Carter. Except I hadn't written them. Daniel tapped one message. Your mother confirmed the loan terms with the bank officer. I read the line again. Yes, I authorize Richard Carter to finalize the credit line. My chest tightened. She pretended to be me. Daniel didn't argue. He simply nodded. Then he slid the last document forward. Wire transfer records. $247,000 moving out of the bank within hours. Destination account. A casino credit clearing system in Indiana. I stared at the page. So it all went straight to gambling. Daniel folded his hands. That appears to be the case. I leaned back and rubbed my face. Honestly, I kept hoping there was some missing piece, some explanation that made it less ugly. There wasn't. Daniel spoke again. The security footage confirms your father and brother attended the loan appointment together. I looked up. Together. Yes. I nodded slowly, because at that point the truth was pretty simple. My father signed. My mother approved. My brother spent it. And they all assumed I'd clean up the mess. 7 days later, we were back in the same conference room. Same table. Same chairs. Same faint smell of paper and furniture polish that made the place feel stiff and quiet. Marcus Hale was already seated when I walked in. My parents sat together across the table. Ethan leaned back in his chair like he was trying to look relaxed, but his fingers kept tapping the armrest. Daniel Brooks looked up and nodded. Let's begin. Marcus opened a thin folder in front of him. Ms. Carter, he said calmly. Northridge Capital is prepared to proceed with collection regarding the loan of $247,000. My father spoke immediately. Marcus, he said quickly, leaning forward. There's been a misunderstanding. Marcus didn't look at him. Richard continued anyway. We're family. We'll resolve this privately. I set my folder on the table. No, I said. The word stopped the room. Everyone looked at me. I opened the folder and slid the first document across the table toward Marcus. The power of attorney. The forged signature at the bottom. Then another document. Printed emails authorizing the loan. Daniel Brooks spoke quietly. These emails were sent from Mrs. Carter's home computer, he said. They were written under Natalie Carter's name. My mother's shoulders began to shake. It wasn't supposed to hurt anyone, she whispered. I didn't look at her. Marcus turned another page slowly. Daniel added, Bank records confirm that Richard Carter and Ethan Carter attended the branch appointment where the loan documents were executed. Ethan finally leaned forward. Look, Natalie, he said, trying to sound reasonable. I thought we'd pay it back. You spent it. I said. His jaw tightened. Marcus closed the folder and folded his hands. So the borrower did not authorize this loan. Daniel Brooks answered clearly. That is correct. Marcus turned his gaze toward my father. In that case, he said calmly, liability may fall on the individuals who submitted the documentation. For the first time that morning, my father looked genuinely afraid. Really afraid. And sitting there, watching it happen, I realized something. For years, my family believed I was the safe one, the one who would quietly fix everything. But this time, I didn't. The room stayed quiet for a long moment after Marcus finished speaking. My father rubbed his hands together like he was trying to warm them. We can fix this, he said. Daniel Brooks didn't respond right away. He opened the will folder again and adjusted the papers in front of him. There is another matter we should address, he said. My mother sniffed and wiped her eyes. What matter? Daniel looked down at the document. 6 months before Harold Carter passed away, he added an additional clause to his will. My father frowned. What clause? Daniel read slowly. If any heir is found to have committed financial fraud against another member of this family, that individual forfeits their inheritance. Nobody moved. I heard the faint ticking of the wall clock behind us. Daniel continued. The forfeited portion will be reassigned to the affected family member. Ethan leaned forward suddenly. Wait, he said. That's not what Grandpa meant. Daniel looked up. The language is quite clear. My father's voice rose. That clause isn't about us. Marcus Hale closed his folder calmly. It appears to apply directly. Daniel turned another page. The portion originally allocated to Richard Carter and Linda Carter totals approximately $1,100,000. My mother went pale. Daniel finished the sentence without changing his tone. That portion now transfers to Natalie Carter. No one spoke. My father stared at the table like the wood might crack open, and for the first time since this whole thing started, the money in that room didn't feel like the biggest thing anymore. Nobody spoke after Daniel Brooks finished reading the clause. My father stared at the table as if the wood might suddenly explain what had just happened. My mother kept wiping her face with shaking hands. Ethan sat very still, no longer leaning back like he owned the room. My father finally said my name. Natalie, listen. I stood up slowly. I am listening. His voice cracked. We can fix this. We'll figure something out. I shook my head. You already figured something out. I said quietly. You just expected me to carry it. Linda reached toward me across the table. We never meant for it to go this far. I looked at her for a moment. $247,000, I said. That was already far. Marcus Hale closed his folder. This matter will proceed with the responsible parties, he said calmly. Daniel Brooks gave me a small nod. The kind lawyers give when a decision has finally become unavoidable. I picked up my coat. Behind me, Ethan said, I didn't think you'd actually do this. I stopped at the door and turned back once. You already did, I said. The room stayed quiet after that. I walked out of the office with the inheritance, but that wasn't the thing that stayed with me. What stayed with me was the strange feeling of walking away from a role I had played my whole life. The responsible one. The fixer. The person who made everything easier for everyone else. Sometimes family asks for help. Sometimes they just assume you'll never say no. And if you've ever been in that position, you probably understand how hard that moment can be. But once you finally step through the door, you realize something. It's also the moment your life actually becomes your own.